Early on, we made a couple of, I think, key observations that other people were not making. And one is that the human microbiome, among other things, lives on human surfaces. And that it can live on a particular human surface by sticking there and working then as a community. And that turns out when bacteria are talking to each other, they secrete quorum sensing molecules. And that's how they talk to each other, both chemically as well as electrically. So if you think about the bacteria that live on us, on surfaces, you come to the idea that it's providing barrier protection. And so that was one of our sort of key points, our key initial points, that the microbiome is living on surfaces. It needs to stay there and function there as a quorum because they're communicating amongst each other, and that they're forming this protective biofilm shield on it, and it protects then the barriers that are there. So that was one of our first key realizations, and frankly, it's also the central point of our intellectual property.
So most people have probably not heard of biofilms. What are biofilms? Mm-hmm. Why do we care? It kind of is exactly what it sounds like. Biofilm is typically a sticky material that has fatty acids and proteins and water and different kinds of sugars, and basically it creates this glue that helps the microbial community stick to a surface. It's nicer to have a home, right? They can live there. It's a place to eat. It's a place where they can thrive, where they can talk to each other, where they can fight off other microbes. And so they form a biofilm community. That makes this population behave as a unified group. So rather than having like 10 different telephone conversations, they're all saying the same thing. They're all saying the same thing in unison at the same time. It delivers a very powerful, coordinated message. That's a biofilm community. Most people and most science to date that looks at biofilm microbes looks at them in a disease context, meaning, okay, well, there's some bad stuff. There's some bad bacteria that can cause infection, especially chronic infections. They don't want to go away because those biofilms also protect the same bacteria against death from antibiotics, for example. It defends them from attack by the human immune system. So most people, if they've heard of biofilms, think of them just in a disease context. But in reality, we are all populated by biofilms, and there's a different proportion of what's in each person's biofilm microbial community. Most of the time, it's essentially controlled by the good guys. So health-promoting microbes essentially will control the smaller population of potential disease-causing organisms. And so many years ago, we thought, well, okay, everybody's looking at the pathogens, the disease-causing components of biofilm. Yeah. Surely there's something good that we can use in this biofilm community that we can help support human barrier integrity. So for the skin to be healthier, for the intestinal tract to be healthier, because that just made sense to use something that is helping to promote our health. It made sense for us to look at that more closely and see if we can use that to reprogram potentially from an imbalance in that community to a healthy balance of that community. And so we started looking at health-promoting biofilms over a decade ago.
Right. I remember way back then in the beginning part, had we been in Boston or San Diego, more central biotech areas, we would have been following everybody else and sequencing all the bacteria that are there. And in some ways, being in Sarasota, Florida, it made us independent. So we were not following the herd. And I think now other people are starting to catch up. And they're starting to realize that the biofilms, actually human beneficial biofilms, are very important And I think we're seeing that more and more. So we got there a number of years ago because we were off on our own.
Yeah, it's a lot of the study of the human microbiome is based in what's called bioinformatics, so a tremendous amount of genetic sequencing about who's there. But the study of bioinformatics has a tendency to usually miss who's doing what. That's the challenge, is to figure out in that needle in the enormous haystack, what is that needle doing? Which one is it? Is it something useful? So what we did essentially was to take health-promoting organisms and grow them as biofilms, and then determine, okay, is this something that would make sense to help promote human health? Is this something that is practical to manufacture, for example? Is this fairly straightforward to put into a capsule or a bottle or what have you? Because a lot of people think that microbes or bacteria, or probiotics for that matter, need to be live to do you good. But I can tell you that as an immunologist, I can tell you that lots and lots of materials can stimulate an immune response, and they are not alive. They are very dead. And yet, they can stimulate a very useful immune response. Right. So in my training, I realized we could take bits of things and make them potentially powerful ways to manipulate human health. And that's what we did with our live biofilms. We took a look to see, can we simplify how we produce these things to be able to make them, honestly, into a potential consumer product? Because that's the other thing my patients kept telling me, is they really wanted to be in control of their health. And they didn't really want to be handed yet another prescription, or line up at the pharmacy for a refill or what have you. They really wanted something that was a more holistic way of approaching the rest of their hopefully healthy lives.